Something disturbing is filtering out of the Vatican palaces. The Virgin is being sidelined, her messages silenced, almost as if they were a burden to the new ecclesiastical line. But this is where everything becomes paradoxical, because this very darkening seems to literally fulfill what Our Lady has been prophesying for decades. If you want to truly understand what's happening, stay with me until the end. The publication of the new Marian document represents a turning point that no one can pretend not to see. It almost programmatically sanctions the abandonment of that Catholic vision, which for centuries has recognized the Virgin Mary as having a central role in the history of salvation. The clear feeling is that there is a desire to shelve a maternal figure capable of interceding, guiding, and protecting the Christian people, replacing her with a weakened image, little more than symbolic, useful to those who desire a religion more palatable in the eyes of the world. In the rejection of the titles of co-redeemer and mediatrix of all graces, we can glimpse a new paradigm, undeclared but evident in the facts, which prefers a Mariology reduced to liturgical ornamentation, closer to Protestant reinterpretations than to the centuries-old Catholic tradition. It's hard not to notice how this operation seeks to rewrite the very role of the Mother of God, stripping it of that supernatural dimension that has nourished the faith of generations and guided the Church in its darkest moments. The widespread feeling among the faithful is that this document is not simply a linguistic update. It seems like the first move in a broader strategy that aims to change the Marian perception in the very heart of the Church, touching what until yesterday seemed untouchable. And a few days ago, a clue arrived. Father Mauricio Gronchi, an authoritative voice of the dicastery for the doctrine of the faith, issued a warning to anyone who dares to support what for centuries has been a living part of Catholic piety. His statement is almost disturbing, attributing to the Virgin Mary an intercessory role capable of holding back divine wrath would constitute a form of superstition. This declaration has swept through the ecclesial world like a trumpet blast, sending an unequivocal message. Traditional categories are no longer welcome. The impression is that the faithful are being educated in a new theological grammar in which Mary is no longer the interceding queen, but a character to be relocated within the rigid confines authorized by dominant modernism. The use of such clear-cut language, almost contemptuous of concepts enshrined in secular devotion, suggests that the debate is not simply about doctrinal precision, but rather about control of the ecclesial narrative. More than a theological intervention, it seems like a political stance against everything that still recalls the sacred and supernatural foundation of the Catholic faith. Thus, while Gronchi dismisses the Marian tradition as a superstitious threat, a vision of the Church is affirmed that prefers to suspect the supernatural rather than recognize it. A Church that seems almost embarrassed by the idea that the Mother of God could actually intervene in history to defend the children entrusted to her. The inevitable impression is that an attempt is being made to introduce a sort of Protestant reading disguised as pastoral updating, in which Mary is welcomed as a noble and devout figure, but deprived of her role in the dynamics of salvation. The gesture does not appear to be a coincidence, because in recent years, every reference to his unique cooperation with the divine plan has been treated with increasing suspicion, as if it belonged to a past that must be overcome. The topic of Marian apparitions enters this scenario as the most delicate point, because the new document and the accompanying declarations suggest a change of direction capable of overturning centuries of ecclesial discernment. The new guidelines establish that the Church will no longer enter into the merits of the supernatural nature of events, leaving the Pope the final word and relegating any theological evaluation to a series of bureaucratic categories that seem designed specifically to discourage anything that breaks the mold. The most disturbing point, the one that many would prefer to ignore, is the clause that penalizes any apparition whose message might highlight tensions between the faithful and the hierarchy, as if the Mother of God could no longer admonish pastors or call the Church to conversion. Thus, the risk is evident. Fatima, La Salette, Akita, and all the apparitions that speak of chastisements, internal crises, and apostasy could be considered suspicious. Not because they conflict with the faith, but because they disturb a certain pacifying narrative that today is sought to be imposed as the only legitimate one. What emerges is a climate in which the supernatural warning is no longer welcomed as heavenly help, but treated as a threat to the new ecclesial order, almost as if the Virgin had to adapt to the diplomatic needs of the Curia. Faced with this reversal of perspective, the perception grows that the objective is not so much to distinguish the true from the false, but to silence those apparitions that remind men and pastors of the gravity of sin and the real possibility of divine punishment. And so, what for generations has nourished the faith of the simple suddenly becomes an encumbrance to be neutralized in the name of a prudence that resembles fear of the supernatural more than doctrinal vigilance. The Fatima case within this dynamic takes on the shape of a test that many fear could be overturned in the near future, because it is precisely there that the most inconvenient truths for the new ecclesial direction are concentrated. For years there has been discussion about the consecration of Russia, performed several times but never in the precise manner indicated by the Madonna. And this detail has become the symbol of an intolerance towards the heavenly requests that no one wants to listen to. Added to this is the issue of the third secret, revealed in a fragmentary way and interpreted as a simple historical event, while all the major approved apparitions have always accompanied the visions with clear and complete explanations, which in the case of Fatima did not happen. Many observe that this opacity is not an accident, but a deliberate attempt to contain a message that speaks openly of a crisis in the Church, of internal betrayals, of a trial that would strike humanity if pastors preferred the world to faith. The idea that the Virgin still holds the arm of her Son, imploring mercy for a humanity that continues to refuse conversion, does not please the new theological language, because it reminds us that sin has real consequences and that the supernatural is not a poetic category to be cited in official speeches, but a living force that judges and recalls. Thus Fatima, with its precise request and its prophetic voice, becomes an obstacle for those who today would like to present a reassuring church. Faced with this tension, fears grow that the goal is to reduce Fatima to a folkloristic memory, emptying its theological meaning and silencing what for millions of faithful is still the most urgent call of our time. Doesn't it make one wonder then, if it isn't paradoxical, that precisely at the moment in which the Virgin is being sidelined, her most explicit messages about apostasy and the building of a false church come back to mind? If you feel the need to rediscover the peace, beauty, and depth of authentic faith, let Gregorian chant accompany you. Visit Fides et Traditio. You'll find voices, prayers, and sounds that bring the heart back to the silence of God. Find the link in the description. What do you think? If you liked the video, comment Amen. God bless you.